how does our mind work to make us successful? In this video, I want to break it down into steps. Simplify it with infographics. To help us better understand the concept, this video includes everything we must know to rewire our minds for success. We can argue that our experiences plus our actions make us either a success or a failure. However, if you consider the majority consensus among psychologists, neurologists, researchers, they all believe that the best explanation for who we are today is that we are the sum of our past experiences and our actions. Our present or past experiences are based on our perceived inner reality, which is not the same as what happens around us, but rather what we perceive our outer reality, what we think about it and how we feel about it. The inner reality is what shapes our decisions and motivates us to take actions that makes us who we are today. So how does this really happen? For that, let's take a look at this diagram. We experience the outer reality, the reality around us, through our 5 basic senses: hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, and seeing. Our outer reality contains everything that is real, existing as it is in the world, but the only way we can observe it is through our senses. All of this data gathered through our 5 basic senses is compiled and processed in our brains to form an inner reality in the mind. The inner reality is not just our thoughts and emotions, but also our deep-seated belief systems that arise through attaching meanings and emotions to our thoughts. It is also vital to note that our brain changes the meaning we attach to our experience of the outer reality in the mind, thereby changing our inner reality. We discussed this in our last video, how the mind creates our reality, and explored different qualities of our brain that changes our perception of the outer reality, such as the reticular activating system, placebo effect, confirmation bias, and more. Okay, so as we discussed earlier, our inner reality is what really motivates us to take action, and our actions determine whether we will become successful in life. So why do we do what we do? Sometimes we do them because we consciously think about them, and sometimes we just do them without even thinking. That's what our 2 types of actions are: voluntary and involuntary action. Involuntary actions do not involve any thoughts and thus are completely dependent on the subconscious mind, such as breathing, blinking, itching, etc. Whereas voluntary actions involve thoughts and can involve both conscious and subconscious minds, like solving a math equation or composing music. We will get to the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious minds in a minute. One thing I want to stress at this point is that realistically, whatever we do depends on only 2 things: our thoughts and our emotions. Emotions play a big part in why do we do what we do. We all know it. Anyway, if we go deeper, we will notice that with every thought we have, we tend to attach a meaning to it internally. Remember, we are discussing all voluntary actions. For example, consider the thought of going to the gym. Logically, it is good for us, so we will probably attach a positive meaning to this thought. But how do we feel about it going to the gym? Well, it might vary depending on how our brains are programmed in relation to this thought. We might feel good about going to the gym if we are a regular, but if we are not, it would definitely feel tiring and less appealing. To understand this, we need to know how our brains get programmed to act in a particular way, how our habits and personalities are formed as we age. We also need to understand the pain-pleasure principle, which explains why we do what we do and how we perceive reality. This principle means that as humans, we tend to avoid painful events and seek out pleasurable ones. It's a no-brainer, right? Well, keep listening. Whatever actionable thoughts we get in our minds, we attach a positive or a negative meaning to it almost naturally. Along with that, we also attach a positive or a negative emotion to our thoughts. If the logical meaning is positive and the emotion is also positive, we will most certainly keep doing it. However, if the logical meaning is negative or bad for us, but it feels good, we might still keep doing it, even though we shouldn't. If the meaning is positive and feeling is negative, most likely we won't follow through with this actionable thought. However, if both the meanings and feelings are bad, then most likely we won't pursue this actionable thought. So based on this pain-pleasure principle, a memory is formed in our minds, containing both our thoughts and related emotions. This is the inner reality that we experience, and it is this memory that flows from conscious mind to our subconscious mind, and then to our unconscious mind, ultimately forming our habits and all of our voluntary actions. This is how our minds are programmed to do what we do in the long run. This is how consistent habits are built. Now, let me explain what the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious minds are. In summary, they really represent the structure of our minds. Our inner reality is created in these three parts of our mind, and our memory flows through them sequentially. The conscious mind is the smallest and involves active, present problem solving and new thoughts. The subconscious mind is a larger repository and includes all past learnings, experiences, and memories that can be recalled whenever necessary. The unconscious mind is the largest and contains everything else stored in it which cannot be remembered or recalled. Much of it is about early childhood memories and experiences that we cannot remember. By now, you must have realized that our voluntary actions or our conscious thoughts and emotions eventually flow into our subconscious and unconscious mind. Therefore, the most crucial elements to remember are that our behavior and actions depend on our thoughts and emotions, or our inner reality, as we stated in the start of this video. So as we grow older, you can imagine this cycle as the way our minds being programmed to build our habits and personalities. The repetition of this cycle establishes a belief system that defines us and drives all our actions, both voluntary and involuntary. You'll be amazed to know that according to scientific research conducted by psychologists and neuroscientists, our subconscious and unconscious minds are responsible for creating 80 to 90% of our behavior, feelings, and actions. Meanwhile, the conscious mind is responsible for only 10 to 20% in combination with the subconscious mind. So we can see the importance of our thoughts, our emotions, and pain-pleasure principle. Consider what we can achieve if we were able to trick our brains into attaching the right meanings and emotions to our thoughts and program our minds for long-term success. Have a personality that will help us live a successful life. Okay, before moving on, here's a little bit about our thoughts and how they emerge. Thoughts are the first perceptions or the initial inner reality of the outer reality created by our minds. Thoughts result from the complex processing of our outer reality in our minds. They primarily emerge from the conscious mind when we solve problems or think about something new. Thoughts can also arise in the subconscious mind depending on the past experiences and memories. In summary, so far on a holistic level, 100% of our behavior are shaped by our inner reality or the meanings and emotions we attach to our thoughts that arise in the conscious mind. The thoughts and emotions in the conscious mind ultimately flow into our subconscious and unconscious minds. Conscious thoughts have the power to influence our subconscious mind, and this concept is very powerful because it means that we can in the long run tame our personality. Another fact you'll relate to is that our memories with the strongest emotional impact in our lives have the greatest influence on us and linger longer in our conscious and subconscious mind. Now, let's touch on another crucial concept that we must understand to comprehend the purpose of this series. The story starts with our thoughts. The more we associate a meaning with our thoughts, that's when our ego emerges. We can also say that ego development is the pattern of how and what meanings we attach to our thoughts throughout our life. Therefore, we must understand ego before we move on to discussing how to control it, and especially why we must control it. So, what is ego? Ego is that portion of the human personality which is experienced as the self or I. The I or self of any person, a person as thinking, feeling, and willing, and distinguished itself from the selves of the others and from objects of its thought. So now, basically, we need to understand that ego generally evolves and develops with time and experiences. According to the ego developmental theory talked about by Susan Greuter and many other psychologists and authors, ego has 9 stages, which we will talk about later. What's more important to understand at this point is that the voices in our heads are mostly the voices of our ego or our thoughts, and these voices create our inner reality because they over time influence and program our subconscious mind, as we learned earlier. For example, if a child keeps thinking that they will be hurt if they play football with other older kids and attach a fearful emotion to these thoughts, it's most likely that as an adult, this child would be fearful of playing and would never be able to perform. However, if a child tackles these thoughts throughout his childhood and takes playing with older kids as a challenge and attaches emotions of enthusiasm and passion with these, the kid will most likely turn out to be a top-class football player. Now, we must be wondering, what is the goal of ego? Or the goal of most of the voices in our head, the goal of attaching meanings to our thoughts. If you think about it, the goal of our ego is to fulfill our basic human needs. Our basic human needs are selfish initially, such as we all need to survive, so we need food, water, etc. for ourselves no matter what. But as our initial needs are met, we start to become less selfish and our basic human needs grow to the next level. Therefore, our ego is inherently selfish too when it is premature at a lower stage. The reason again is that our ego is trying to meet our basic human needs. Our ego evolves and grows less selfish as our human needs are fulfilled. We start thinking about security only when we are no longer hungry, right? Then as we feel safe and secure, we need to feel loved. As these needs are fulfilled, say for instance, once we feel secure, our thoughts automatically become more about love and connection with others. We become less selfish and more accepting because we want to feel connected with others too. We cannot feel connected with others if we are selfish. So as our human needs are met, our ego evolves. But does our ego evolve as our human needs are not met? Most likely not. Our ego and thoughts change as our circumstances change. For example, if I feel safe today, so I need to feel loved. But if I don't feel safe, I'll focus and think about security myself before I even think about love or family or friends. That's what human needs are. They change according to the situation. This generally manifests as intrusive and selfish thoughts that we experience. Therefore, we must learn to tame our ego and emotions even if our needs are not met. That's what sets us up for success. That's what makes us fearless and gives us the courage to do the impossible. As we approach the end, I want to give you an example that illustrates that the world respects and wants to work with people who are more selfless. The Japanese engineers are generally very giving, selfless, and loyal, and it shows through their industrial revolution, scientific advancements, and relatively better cultural values. So they work for their companies without thinking too much. A Japanese worker or an engineer, his loyalty and sincerity to his company is so high that he does not focus on what he's receiving. He focuses on giving, and he gives his 110% to his team and company. And an average person like us, they are always focused on what am I getting? If the company doesn't meet my needs, I'm going to quit. Who do you think is going to receive more? Who's going to become the CEO? The moral of the story is that all of us are inherently selfish. But if we are able to change the meanings we attach to our thoughts and control our negative emotions, our ego evolves into a more selfless one. So the higher the stage of our ego, the less selfish we are, and the more chances we have to become successful in all aspects of our life. This phenomena of the world wanting to work with us if we are selfless not only plays out in the terms of money, but also all our goals, career, business, relationships, etc. If we become a giving person, we gain the same energy from people around us. Once we become selfless and control our thoughts and emotions, we become more fearless, more motivated, more spiritual, and most of all, start to develop a growth mindset.